So we are at our 9th annual Calumet Heritage Conference. The Calumet Heritage Partnership was founded 10 years ago in the wake of the National Park Service's feasibility study for an ecological park in the region. And the Park Service surveyed cultural and natural resources in the region and concluded that there's definitely material here to pursue, perhaps at some point in time, some kind of designation of heritage corridor. And the Heritage Partnership was formed to kind of keep that candle lit, that idea going. What form that may eventually take, nobody really knows, but there still is a lot of interest on both sides of the state line and a lot of effort. Our annual conferences have kind of meditated on that theme of what the heritage of the region has to say to us today. And today's conference takes a particular theme, takes transportation as a theme, and looks back a little bit in a particular way at some particular transportation history of the region, and then it looks forward as well. And then we have a wonderful afternoon planned as well. So if you're staying with us for that, that's great. I meant to comment on a couple of practical matters. So where are the washrooms? They're right out there, right?
Yeah, just go out the theater.
Okay, I'll be right back. So they're just right out there. And feel free, we also have, this year we've scheduled a longer break time so that you can, there's more time to mingle, look at the exhibits, and to see what's, to meet folks. Let me just say a couple of things before I introduce our first speakers. And I have this. Isn't that cool? 3 years ago, we met in Valparaiso, and we thought about the work of geographer Alfred Meyer, who did a lot to sort of foreground the Calumet as a region, as a bi-state region, one that has natural coherence, but also in the way that people have used the region for the last couple hundred years. It's cohered. And transportation was a very important theme for Meyer. And these are just a couple of things that he happened to say. And also, I just wanted to put this up here so that I could say the word compage at 9 o'clock in the morning. Compage. The Calumet region, this is classic regional geography talk from 1956. But it's a compage of the nodal type circulation in and out of the Chicago area being the criterion of homogeneity. In other words, the thing that holds this region together is how people move around, both within it, and there's some characteristic patterns of transportation within this region, and then how it connects outward to the rest of the world. And of course, the Calumet region takes unusual prominence at the head of navigation, at the head of the lake, through all the historic stages of human occupants. The primary fact of location for this region is being at the head of Lake Michigan, one of the things that Meyer says. And here we are, and it still influences the way that things move in and through and from and back to this region. Here, 50-some years after he wrote this, transportation is still a very key theme. One of the things that I was interested in just taking a quick look at, this sort of, it says cultural resources with a transportation theme. It just sort of wandered off the page this morning. But I did take a quick look at the feasibility study just to see what it might have had to say 10 years ago about transportation themes. And here's just a few of the cultural resources that the Park Service bracketed out as transportation-themed resources. And you can see it's a kind of a mixed things from Indian trails to pioneer trails from Chicago down to Vincennes, to waterway features like the Cal-Sag Channel, to rail features, and on into even the early history of flight. Some of these things are familiar to you, and the Sauk Trail I think we'll be exploring in much greater detail this afternoon in parts of the tour with Cynthia Ogora this afternoon. And there you see the Chicago South Shore and Southbound Railroad, and we'll be hearing about that in just a couple of seconds. But this is just to suggest that there are, through all the stages of historic occupants, transportation and the heritage of transportation is still on the ground, still there. Now, if you dig further into the feasibility study, you'll see that what the Park Service called transportation, well, that was one way to bracket it, but if we just look at some other things, we could very quickly say, well, there's a bunch of other stuff that has a transportation theme. For example, where was Pullman on that earlier list? Well, it's on this list, which was among the Park Service's things that had to do with labor. You can see the industry theme. We just switched our computers this morning. That's why the interesting spellings there of some things. But you can see a few of the other features that could conceivably have a transportation link. At U.S. Steel Southworks, the ore walls are still there, and the slips are still there, and whatever happens to that site, transportation is going to be a key feature of it, and one of the newest roads in the region is being built right through it right now. The state line generating plant might expand our definition of transportation, but certainly electricity is necessary to the South Shore Railroad. And not to mention that the architects of that plant were the successor firm, Graham Anderson, Probst and White, to Daniel Burnham and Company. And next year we have an opportunity to look back 100 years since the Burnham plant. And you can see a couple of the other features, even down to the Nike missile sites, both at Wolf Lake and Portage. Some of the other sites, a different kind of transportation with different kind of cargo. But transportation, of course, covers just about everything. And a few other points here, some National Register of Historic Places. Some of these things get us even further into the transportation resources, heritage resources of the area. Railroad stations, the Bailey site, the fur trade, even the shipwreck site in Michigan City. So the point is that transportation history has made the region, has defined it. Pieces of the legacy are still with us. Maybe one of the things that we should be doing is thinking how these cohere into themes that we might take as a group as we think about the future heritage resource planning for the area. Not all of these are success stories. On this list are things that worked and some that didn't work. Here's something that we did last weekend as the Calumet Heritage Partnership, and I wanted to just comment on this. On that lowboy is a 25-ton large blast furnace bell that was moved from one side of the Calumet River over to Pullman, about 5 miles away. And on the lower right hand, you can see the bell and the small bell and an ingot pattern mold in front of the clock tower of the Pullman State Historic Site. Even moving freight around in this fashion is a transportation story. And if you think about what Acme Steel was making, it was making steel straps for holding freight together as you shipped it around. It's not just the routes and the depots, it's where raw materials came from and how they were made, and it's what the end uses are that are part of the transportation story. This also says patience pays off. Sometimes things work and sometimes they don't. We've had some successes and we've had some losses, but we got this done. I would like to acknowledge in this move that we just did last week the three Bs. Simon Beamster patiently held this blast furnace bell on his property for 3 years while we figured out how to move it. Frank Bieberdick made a generous donation that permitted us to finance the boom, and Marion Burns was behind it at every step of the way, trying to figure out how we could best get this thing done. Marion's in the hospital these days. She's a very important part of the Calumet Heritage Partnership, and I wanted to acknowledge her, and of course we all wish her well.